Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Women Like Me Stories in Business. I'm your host, Julie Fairhurst, and I'm here with Zola Habibi. Now, this is going to be a really, really interesting conversation, so I hope that you hang in there for it. So, what happens when a devastating personal loss becomes the beginning of a lifelong purpose? My guest today is an international speaker, human rights and women rights advocate, and a member of the NCRI Foreign Affairs Committee. Zola's life was forever changed when her father, who was a writer, was executed in Iran's 1988 massacre. She was left with not only the grief of losing her father, but with the legacy of a man whose words and beliefs carried an unimaginable cost. She had to make a powerful choice, and she would not allow the loss to be the end of her story. So, for more than 2 decades, she has worked to amplify women's voices and the voices of others who cannot speak freely, turning personal tragedy into a mission rooted in courage and hope and purpose. Thank you so much for being here, Zola. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for this opportunity. And please allow me to greet those who are tuning into the podcast today. It's a pleasure to be with you. And thank you for that introduction, actually.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. So, before we begin talking about your advocacy, what would you like to tell us about the woman behind the work? So, who are you when you step away from your public role?
Well, that is a bit difficult to answer because everything is so intertwined. The
Mhm.
reality is that when you are a member of the resistance, it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's 24/7 and continuous. So it is really part and parcel of who I am and on day-to-day basis. But yeah, as you mentioned, I belong to the generation that was born after the 1979 revolution in Iran. And my parents came to the US before the revolution, so I've actually never had the opportunity to see Iran, but Iran has always been a great part of my life. I could literally say that I don't remember a day that I haven't thought about the people of Iran, the plight of the people of Iran, from childhood to this day. And so even though we weren't in Iran, I think there hasn't been a day that I haven't thought about the people of Iran and what is happening there. I was introduced to the situation in Iran very early on because of my parents' activism. Um, my father was a prominent writer and a human rights activist, and so that made a major impact, especially since as a child, I remember, well, my dad, because he was a writer, he would be at home more. So I was always with my dad, and I was like daddy's little girl, very attached
Oh,
to my father. But um, he also like the I guess the method my parents used to, as their method of upbringing was they tried to explain everything to me like from early on, and they never told me what's right or wrong. They would explain like the scenarios to me, and they'll be like, what do you think? And so they taught me to first of all, I guess, respect my own decisions, or also understand that I have that capability to make those decisions and make to analyze things. And I think that that actually really helped me tremendously after my father was killed and after everything that came up after that, because it made me, I guess, be able to look at the situation from a different perspective. I guess it just, as a 7-year old, you know, having to deal with such trauma could be very devastating. But I
yes.
think one of the things that helped me was just having that understanding of what is the bigger picture, what is happening in Iran. Am I the only one who's going through this, or like an exception to the rule, or no, is this something that is happening, systematically in this country, and what is it that we
Mhm.
need to do about it, or how am I going to react to it? I think I was about 4 or 5 the first time I met people who were victims of torture. And to me, they became like my real life superheroes, because actually they were people who had escaped prison, and they had come to the US to go and testify at the United Nations and in the US Congress. And so during that time they stayed at our house for like 2 weeks because my dad was working with them and documenting everything. And I think learning about those things early on, it just gives you a different perspective. When my father was killed, you just mentioned it was in July of 1988. Actually, in 10
Oh,
days is the anniversary of my father being killed. But I think, I mean, the devastation was, great for me. But um, what happened that summer didn't just impact my life, it impacted the lives of millions in Iran, and actually the history of Iran, because that summer Khomeini had 30,000 political prisoners executed in just 5, 6 weeks.
wow.
And before anyone was able to do anything, it was already too late. And whenever, and today, actually, to be honest, this year, I've seen so many parallels to what was happening back in 1988. The massacre started actually yesterday was the anniversary of the start of the 1988 massacre. It started right at the day the ceasefire was signed between Iran and Iraq after an 8-year war. Khomeini knew that for 8 years he had suppressed everything internally in Iran by saying, we have a foreign enemy, we're at foreign war. And once that's settled, he knew that this society is like a powder keg waiting to explode. So he needed to spread fear in society to make sure that no one thinks of or is willing to take the risk of coming to the streets. And so that's why he had the massacre of political prisoners. Today, also, since the ceasefire, actually, we have seen a wave of political executions in Iran. And today, as we are speaking, it is day 4 of um, a, a strike by over 1,500 prisoners in just one prison in Iran who are on death row. And they're trying to draw attention to this new wave of executions that's been happening. There have been over 900 executions carried out in Iran since beginning of the year, and you have to understand this is at least 900 because there was an internet blackout for practically most of um, to 2026. In January, we had an 18-day internet blackout, and then we had an 80-day internet blackout during the war. So that information, it was very difficult to be able to gather it. So these numbers aren't exact right now. But this is aside from the thousands of people who were killed in January in the protest in Iran, when the regime opened fire on peaceful protesters. And this is aside from the devastation that has been created in the aftermath of the war, and what is happening even right now in the southern part of Iran with the war and the destruction. So it's been a very difficult year for the people of Iran, but also I think many Iranians feel like we have already turned the point of no return. So moving forward, we see freedom near. We also understand that change is the only way we will see change is by the people of Iran. And that is something that we have actually stood for and advocated for decades. I remember over 22 years ago, I think this is what Javi first said at the European Parliament, that the solution to the crisis of Iran is neither war nor appeasement. It's to support the people of Iran to bring about change. I think today the world has seen that in practice, that neither one is the solution, and the solution is to support the people of Iran, to be able to bring about true change. Because unfortunately, no one's going to hand you freedom in a silver platter,
Mhm.
and democracy can't be installed. And the people of Iran have that experience. I mean, if you just look at our history in the last century, unfortunately, since the 1906 constitutional revolution till today, the people of Iran have been continuously fighting for freedom. Uh, for 120 years, actually, people have been fighting for freedom in Iran. But every time it's very short-lived because it is, hijacked really, by foreign interest and meddling and whatnot. So
Mhm.
we also have seen the effects of intervention because, like for instance, the Pahlavi dynasty, Reza Khan, he was installed by the British and at the turn of the century, practically, and then once they were worried about his alignment with Hitler and everything, they put him aside and they brought in his son. And soon after that, because his son wasn't in the, he didn't have the strong position at the beginning of his reign. Muhammad Reza Pahlavi, that everyone knows as the Shah. The first few years, he was very, limited in his powers because he was afraid of being replaced the same way that his father had been replaced. And so the people of Iran had a bit of a leeway at that time. And so we saw the, the only democratically elected prime minister Iran has ever had was Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh, and he nationalized Iran's oil. That was not to the benefit of Western power, especially the British and the US, because at that time Iran was receiving only 6% of its oil income and revenues. The rest was going to
Oh.
British Petroleum. And so, because of
Mm.
that, they actually had the coup d'etat against Dr. Mossadegh. And so, the only democratic government we've had in Iran in the last century only lasted 2 years. And
Wow.
then, fast forward, I mean, after that, the coup d'etat, the Shah knew that he was an asset for Western powers, and so he ruled with the iron fist, with the savak and the tortures and executions and everything that. I was working on a report a while ago, and I realized that I ran into uh, a report from Amnesty International. I think it's 1976 annual report, and at that time it says Iran is the #1 country in executions per capita. Unfortunately, today Iran is still the #1 country in executions per
Mhm.
capita. And
Wow.
so the people of Iran have been suffering from that. And so the people of Iran actually revolted against the Shah, and they were able to end monarchy in Iran. But their revolution was hijacked by Khomeini. Why?
Mm.
Because it was the Cold War era. And during the Cold War era, uh, about 6 months before, everyone knew that the Shah was on the verge of collapsing, especially after he opened fire on peaceful protest on September, I think it would be September 8th,
Mm.
September 8th of that year. And, um, you know, uh, hundreds were killed on the streets that day. And 18 months later, the Shah was gone.
Mm.
And so everyone's from then was starting to, sorry, actually 6 months later, the Shah was gone. And so everyone realized that the Shah was on the verge of falling apart. So they had a conference in Guadeloupe in France, where Western powers discussed, what comes next, because Iran had a very large common border with the USSR, and Iran has always played a very important geopolitical role in the region. You see it now with Strait of Hormuz and everything too, but
Yes. Yeah.
even aside from that, culturally, or whatever, like for instance, with Dr. Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil, you saw this movement of independence in the whole Middle East. And unfortunately, when the mullahs came into power, you see the spread of Islamic fundamentalism in the region. So Iran has always played that role. And at that time, those who had actually created the revolution were more progressive movements. And unfortunately, those progressive movements were mostly in prison at that time. And so, unfortunately, Khomeini was brought in because he made certain promises to the Western powers, and they felt, well, you know what, at the end of the day, we know he's not going to align with the USSR, but with those who are, elite and progressive, we don't know where they're going to stand. So, unfortunately, the people of Iran have been paying the price for that for 47 years now. So
Wow.
that is the history of it. That's why the people of Iran are like, we don't want war, we don't want troops on the ground, we don't want your financial support. Just please stop the policy of appeasement, because
Yeah.
unfortunately, in the
Yeah.
past, 45 years, the people of Iran, and especially the Iranian resistance, have been used as the bargaining chip at the negotiation table. So it hasn't been just the fact that they haven't supported the people of Iran. In fact, they have used the people of Iran as leverage,
Yeah.
giving into whatever demands that the Iranian regime has. And so we've paid a grave price for that.
Yeah. Well, when you speak about women's rights, which fundamental freedoms are you talking about?
Well, I think that first and foremost for us is equality,
Mm,
gender equality. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a place in the world that we still have full gender equality anywhere. But we hopefully that is one of the goals that the world is working towards, and hopefully it'll be reached soon. But the reality is that in our resistance, we have gone further than that. We believe in equity when it comes to women's empowerment. And we believe that the path to the emancipation of both men and women goes through women's empowerment. And so that's why since like 1993, the entire Iranian resistance has been led by women. I mean, 52% of the parliament in exile are women. All of the secretary generals of the PMOI, which is the main organizations, which is a member of the NCRI, have been women since 1980.
oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and the entire leadership council of this organization is 100% women. And because we believe that women are the force for change, because especially in dealing with a fundamentalist regime like the Iranian regime, which is misogyny is one of the cornerstones. And in fact, Khomeini was able to intervene in people's most personal aspects of their lives by writing misogyny into law. Because
Mm,
that when you force, like for instance, when you start dictating to people how to dress and not to dress,
yes.
you are entering every person's personal life, right? And when you start from there, there's nothing that's off limits then, and that
Yes.
is why. And Khomeini understood that because he knew that, well, this way, if you're controlling half of society, then you have full control over all of society, and that is why we believe that the only way to be able to uproot this regime, it's not just a political war, it's also ideological. You have to be able to hit it in its roots, and one of that is you have to be 180 degrees opposite of that. I mean, if you still have some of the same mindsets, you're not going to be
Hmm.
able to overthrow such a regime, because it's not a classical dictatorship. It's rooted in what they presented as religion. We don't believe that the mullahs are, religious at all. They're just using religion to justify their crimes and for power. But yeah, so it has to be. And what's interesting is that the main opposition is, you know, uh, the main organization is a Muslim group that stands for separation of religion and state, and for and promotes women's gender equality in all its capabilities and capacities, but women's empowerment. If you put that as the goal, then under that, all of the other rights are guaranteed. But when you're missing that, you know, that step, that block, then
Yeah.
you're really not reaching for full equality.
Mm.
Unfortunately, we see it. I mean, the U.S. Unfortunately, we've never had a U.S. Female president yet.
Yep.
Um, and why is that? Or even like, for instance, in France, why not? Because that male dominance is still very strong, and it won't
Hmm.
allow it.
Yeah.
It's not that there aren't capable women to fill these, positions. There are plenty, but they're not given the possibilities. And so, Mrs. Rajavi is actually has so just to give you a background on this, in why has this resistance come to this point? Back in I mean, every year the Iranian resistance has done, and when I speak of the Iranian resistance in this pretext, I'm speaking mostly about the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, which is also known as MEK in the US. They would do an annual analysis of, the year that has passed, what has been done, where we're going, and whatnot. And so, in their analysis of 1984, they realized that women were overcoming more barriers and obstacles to join the movement. They were facing systematic repression inside of Iran. I mean, because when they in joining the movement, it's both socially, like in society. I mean, for you can just let's go back, 40 years ago. It's more accepted for your son to join like a resistance than your daughter. That was like the mentality.
Yes. Yes.
So you have
Yeah.
to overcome those barriers at home first of all. And
Yes.
aside from that, in prison, the regime had like this hatred toward these women who were defiant. So they were facing more severe tortures, more
Mm.
brutality, and they were also being targeted, with because of their gender, specifically with rape and whatnot. So many different things that were being done to them, but they were also the most resilient. They were also the ones who were most steadfast and were not breaking, you know, under these very difficult situations. And the resistance realized that, but then they realized something else. They're like, then if this is the reality of Iranian women that we're seeing, and it's systematic, it's not one or two or 10 or even 100 or 1,000. Why are they not represented in the highest ranks of this movement? And so the moment that they realized, they decided to change the whole structure of the movement and bring women into leadership positions. And in fact, since then, at that time, Mrs. Rajabi, she was chosen as the co-leader of this movement. And she has actually been the one who has led the way, the path to, women's empowerment in this movement.
Yeah.
And
Well, what?
she has created like this whole generation of
Yeah.
capable female leaders now.
Yeah. Well, why is controlling women's voices so connected to controlling their choices, identities, and futures?
Well, I think that, I mean, you know, it it just goes hand in hand, really. Um,
Mm.
if women play an important role in every society, because at the end of the day, I mean, they are the ones who are raising society
Yes.
through their children and whatnot too, and the role that they play in society, in every aspect of society, they are a corner, you know, they're not just homemakers or whatnot. They are truly creating the society that we live in. But that male mentality wants to keep them suppressed and under control.
Hmm.
And that is the problem that we face everywhere, right?
Yes.
In Iran specifically, though, because of uh, Islamic fundamentalism being, the power, the ruling power, they use that they exploit that, and try to suppress women because, as I said, once you suppress women, you can suppress everything else in society too, and silence everyone. I mean, I think from like when you look back, 1981, when the mass executions began, in the first few months, you saw young girls at 13, 14 years old being executed. I don't know how much a 13-year-old girl knows about politics to be executed based on that. We actually have pictures of newspapers from 1981. It's like a whole page of pictures of teenage girls who have been executed, and it says, the title says, would the parents of these children come and identify their bodies? We don't even know their names and they've been executed. And so we had that, and then we had execution of like elderly mothers in their 70s or pregnant women. Khomeini wanted to send a message that way to society that if I don't show mercy to them, I'm not going to show mercy to you. So just don't take the risk. don't
Hmm.
don't cross me, right? And I think what's important though is that the women of Iran have never given in to the status quo in and they have used every possibility to counter, you know, the regime or show their defiance. Be it through, like, for instance, one of the interesting facts is that um, they in I think in the last like 2.5 decades, or like since 2000 at least, I'm sure. Before that, I'm not really too sure about, but since like 2000, there have been more female students in universities than there have been male in Iran. So we have a very well educated female population. It's not that they have positive discrimination for women to, be able to enter universities.
Yeah.
Women see it as a way to resist in face of this regime. They're like, you want to push us back into our homes? We're not going to let you. We're going to study. We're going to become something. We're going to, accomplish great things. And Iran has the greatest brain drain in the world right now. So that's why you see like there's so many, very successful Iranians, both in the US and around the world. And just imagine if these people were actually able to serve their own people. I always
Hmm.
think that
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
greatest asset that we have is our people, and
Yes.
unfortunately, they're not able to um, serve their
Mhm.
own people. I remember um, Iranians. I don't know if you know many Iranians, but they put great emphasis
Yeah,
in
I
education.
I I live in Canada and we have and I'm in the Vancouver area of British Columbia. We have a very large Iranian
Yes, you
community.
do. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
In Vancouver.
Yeah.
But like for instance, if you look, I remember reading, like as I said, they put great emphasis in education and becoming something. And growing up, I actually wanted to go and study medicine. That was like my life
Oh,
path. Um, and then I remember actually in 1998, I was a it was like the summer after my junior year, and I was looking through a magazine, a Iranian magazine, and I ran into an article that wrote there were 20,000 Iranian doctors in the US at the time.
wow.
And I remember thinking to myself, are you going to be one of those 20,000? Are you going to do something for Iran to be freed so these 20,000 could actually go and serve their own people?
Yeah.
And right now that number has, increased dramatically. And so that's just like one aspect of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the women of Iran, like for instance, I think in 2022, the world was awed by the bravery of the women of Iran coming to the streets. But um, many thought of it as like a new phenomenon. But for us, it was actually completely the expected route because we have been seeing this in our society for decades. And in fact, it's like the ripple effect. When the Iranian resistance is being led by women, they are breaking a lot of those glass ceilings in society. And even if the regime tries to censor everything, everyone knows this reality. So, in fact, directly or indirectly, you actually have those role models in your back set of your mind, even if
Yeah.
you're not directly in contact with the resistance or anything. But you know that the Iranian resistance is actually led by women, and their entire leadership council is women. Even when they had a military, the top commanders of that military were women. So I
Oh,
mean, those things really, break those cliches. And then you also believe in that, their motto is you can and you must. And so there isn't anything that you can't do. And
yeah.
that is what gives them strength. And especially Mrs. Rajavi always says, it's like a spring. The more pressure that you put on a spring, when you take that pressure off, the more, capability or potential it has to jump. And that
Yes.
is
Yes.
the situation. They have been systematically suppressed for so long. When you take that pressure off, there's so much potential to jump there. And
Wow.
you have to understand, like, every dictator, unfortunately, has tried to, in Iran, actually, in the last, century, they have tried to somehow, you know, have their grip on women. Like, for instance, Reza Khan, the father of the Shah, when he was in power, he he wanted to, at that time, women had become very active in the revolutions in Iran, and he wasn't too fond of that. But he also wanted to, because like they were actually back, just imagine, like, this is 1920s, women in Iran were taking up arms to fight against, you know, the system and whatnot. He wasn't very fond of that. So one of the things that he did was in the process that he wanted to like westernize Iran, he at one point said, everyone had to remove the headscarf, like systematically, the
Hmm.
same way that the mullah said everyone has to wear it systematically. And so that pushed a lot of women in society into their homes who didn't want to be in their homes. So, it looked like he was trying to like give more liberties to women, but who are you as a man to dictate to a woman what to wear or what not to wear? It's not your choice. It's her choice. It's her
Yes.
decision. No one should have to have that right to dictate to anyone, be it a man or a woman, what to wear or what not to wear. But
Hmm.
we see two dictators controlling women this way, one by forcing it and one by forcibly removing it. So it's both the same thing. It's the same mentality at work there.
Yes.
And
Yes, for sure.
so that's why when
Hmm.
women now in Iran see, hey, there's a movement that gives, you know, believes in your capability and gives you that leeway that you are the ones who will bring change. I remember back like in 1996, I think Miss Magic gave a speech in London.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry,
There we go.
I think I was having an incoming call. That was the problem.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, that's okay.
but in 1996, I remember Mrs. Rajavi had a speech, and she said to Khomeini, like she directed her speech to Khomeini, said, "This the suppressed women of today are the vanguards of tomorrow, and your
Mhm.
regime will be overthrown by this force."
Wow.
Back then, this was in the 1990s. I mean, I don't know how many people took that seriously or thought that was just a soundbite, but no, that was her belief, and that is what she has actually put into place. And now we're seeing
Hmm.
like the results of it,
Yeah,
decades later. But I think
yeah.
that women are truly that, play that role. in Iran
Hmm.
society. And I hope that, once we do see true democracy flourish in Iran, maybe that could serve as an example for a lot of other women around the world. And to
Absolutely.
see that potential that, the reality is that, we have yet to see a society where all human beings are treated as equal. But the path to the emancipation of human beings goes through, you know, women's empowerment and
Yeah.
equity first,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
you can't create equality all of a sudden. It's not
No.
a balanced, grounds right now.
Yeah. Can I ask you if there have been times when you've been afraid to use your own voice?
Um, mm, I the threat has always been there, and I've been aware of the threat, but I haven't been afraid of using it because I think that my parents actually were the greatest role models for me in that. Because I think the reality is that, I mean, after my father was killed, my mother decided to join the Iranian resistance, and so we actually went from DC to, at that time, the Iranian resistance was based in Iraq. So we ended up going to Iraq
Huh.
at that. This is 1988. And
Yeah.
then the first Gulf War happened. It wasn't safe for children to stay there. So my mom came to a crossroads, and she was 27 or so at that time, and with two small kids. And she made the decision to stay. And she sent me and my brother abroad to be raised by my aunt. And, you know, I always commended her for doing that because I knew that it wasn't an easy decision for her at all.
Mm.
But she, I think that they taught us that there are times in life that you have to pay a price for your beliefs and your principles and to put that before everything else. And
Yeah.
so I think they taught us what's important in life through their own example instead of,
Mhm.
just words. And because they did take that risk, I mean, they put their life on the line for the freedom of the people of Iran. So we learned very early on, I guess, that, these things come with a price. It's not going to be easy. Aside from my father, like for instance, two of my dad's colleagues were also assassinated, one in Rome and one in Geneva in 1990 and 1989 and 1991, I believe. But that became like a reality that I grew up with, knowing that that
Mhm.
is always there. Even just last month, we had a rally, and we had planned a rally in Paris. Over 100,000 people were expected to be attending, and that morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, the French government they banned the rally, and then later on, police report said that there were threats, terrorist threats by the regime and also by remnants of the monarchy and whatnot. So really, when you are the force that is that serious and the regime sees you as a threat to its existence, unfortunately, these are some of the things that come with it.
Yeah.
And there have been, attempted, bombings and things like that before. The headquarters of the movement back when they were in Iraq, they were, targeted numerously, and that's why through a international campaign with the help of the UNHCR and the US government and many others, we were able to transfer like 3,000 people to mostly to Europe and
Mm.
Albania. Um, but that was like a very difficult campaign,
Yeah.
but we were
Yeah.
able to do that
Yeah.
because the Iranian regime really sees them as a threat to its existence. So
Yeah. Well, how has your advocacy changed you personally over the past 2 decades?
well, I think that the first and foremost, first of all, I think is being more connected to the people of Iran than ever, and understanding their pains and suffering. But I think aside from that, one of the greatest impact has been, I guess, seeing like the bigger picture and, and understanding that. And then when you see that, you as a person just, I guess, that loses its weight in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like kind of like when you see, I mean, I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but like when you see like the universe and whatnot, you know that the Earth is like this tiny place in there, and then you are like that tiniest bit in there. So in the entire big picture, like what is your impact, or like how? So I think it
Mm.
just makes understanding that I don't mean to downplay my role, because in fact I think that we can all be that force for change. We can be the change we want to see in every society, and every single one of us can make that difference.
Yes.
And that is why I have dedicated so many years of my life to the fight for freedom, because in fact, I think that we are very decisive. But on the other hand, understanding that, you have the opportunity right now to be part of history in the making. But on the other hand, understanding that bigger picture makes you not think of like, oh, I've done so much. No, there's so much more. And I think that
Hmm.
that culture, or that mindset of self-sacrifice and giving is really important, because I think that at the one thing that every human being has the capability to do unlimited, without that no one can stop you in, is giving. You
Hmm.
can give so much every single day to everyone, and no one
Yeah.
can stop you from doing that. And that
No.
is, in fact, your greatest power. And that is
Yes.
what makes change. That
Yeah.
has been my personal experience, I think, most of
Yeah.
it. More
Well,
than
what do you think? I'm in Canada. So what can a woman in Canada do to help?
there's a lot that you can do, actually. There is, first of all, I think raising awareness is very important, what you just did today. But to learn more about it and understand it, for those who might want to learn more, they can visit the website of the Iranian Resistance. I could give you those so you can add it to the show notes. But also, I think that, uh, you know, the Iranian diaspora in different countries is very active. Um, they We don't raise our hand, extend our hands asking for help to governments, but we do to people and individuals. Um, but there's a lot that can be done. If you reach out to iranfreedom.org, they could put you in contact with local chapters. We do have actually a lot of activists in throughout Canada, the U.S., Europe. But like for instance, they carry out a lot of different protests, rallies, exhibits, work with parliament and lawmakers, the media, to try to bring attention to what is happening in Iran, and they have been very effective in their work constantly. So yeah, just feel free to reach out, and they will put you in contact with local chapters. No matter where you are, we probably have a chapter there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a
So
lot that can be done.
can people reach out to you?
Oh, of course, I'm also available, I guess, on social media, on X, Instagram, LinkedIn, under my own name. You should
Yeah.
be able to find it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have some of those links in the show notes so people are able to find you. I'm curious, how can men become meaningful allies in protecting the rights and freedom of women?
Actually, that is a very interesting aspect of our movement, and that is, I think, one of the things that's we need to talk about even more. But is the fact that through these, I guess it's been over 30 years that we have women empowerment in the resistance, men have actually they haven't been pushed to the sidelines. In fact, they are now taking on much more responsibilities, and they actually see themselves as, as having so much more potential than they used to. In fact, they always, when you speak to any of them, they really strongly support this woman's empowerment and having women in hegemony. And it's really interesting hearing it from them directly, because they always say, these gender roles in society, it's not only something that acts as a shackle, around the hands or feet of women. It's on men too. And in fact, being able to free yourself from that, then that brings it helps flourish your human values and your morals and principles and everything. But it also gives you like this, I guess, engine of to
Yeah.
be more active and be able, because your energy is freed. Um,
Yeah.
it's like part of the E equals MC2, equation, because that is like that energy that you're freeing up that we have so much of, and we still are not able to use it. So it is part of that. So yeah, men also play a very important role in this
Yeah.
movement and in the fight against this regime.
Yeah.
And in actually standing by their, you know, sisters and the women in the society, and saying enough is enough. We need to put an end to this, systematic discrimination that exists in
Yeah.
society everywhere.
Yeah. Well, Zola, I have just appreciated you being here. You've educated me, so thank you for that. And I'm sure many of our listeners are going to hopefully be inspired by you and by what you do and everything that you've been doing. I have one last question. If you could speak directly to a woman who feels forgotten, powerless, or afraid, what would you want her to hear?
I would want her to know that no one can take away your strengths and your willpower. So first of all, respect yourself and your decisions. And if you whatever you put your mind to, if you make that decision and pay the price for that decision step by step, it doesn't have to be like huge leaps, even tiny steps. Eventually you will be able to reach that. So there's no one that can stop you from doing that. Believe in your own strength. And also, the best way to start, I guess, nurturing that is by taking the hand of another woman and empowering her. That is like it's a chain of continuous giving, right? And that will create a whole momentum that you will see that you have this potential, and you have so much that you can accomplish if you put your mind to it and if you pay the price for that decision every single day. So respect your decisions and stay loyal to them and pay the price for it, and you'll be able to
Yeah.
change. You could make a major difference no matter where you are or where you start from.
Yeah. That's a beautiful message. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Oh, well, I thank you and for being here and for sharing everything, all of your life, your family's life, the history that you know, and helping to bring awareness to all of us. Because a lot of the stuff I knew some stuff, but I didn't know all of the stuff. So all of the stories. So I thank you for that very much.
Well, it was a
And
pleasure to be with you.
oh, thank you. And for all of you, thank you for being here. Please remember, we will have ways that you can reach out, information in the show notes. So don't hesitate to have a look there and reach out. And if you feel the nudge to get involved, then get involved. We all have to do our part in the world. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and we will see you all next time on the next episode of Women Like Me Stories in Business. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.